Oh my god, I cannot thank you guys enough. This is the most views that I've gotten on anything, and there were so many positive comments. I just sincerely want to say how much I appreciate everybody who had something positive or constructive or anything to say about any of it. It was great to see. I just disappeared for a year and then came back, and a lot of people actually enjoyed it. So I figured I'd just keep it going. Here's Star Wars Episode VIII. And just so everybody's clear on the way this is structured, for the last one, for the Episode VII Redux, I wrote some notes and recorded in one go on one day. I didn't think about it beforehand. I just thought, okay, well, maybe I could do this better than what they did. Just to point out, just to say that it's not that difficult. Just put a little bit of effort into it. So this one, I took a couple of days to write some notes out for this one. And again, I'm trying to use a lot of the things that they set up in their movies that they wanted to use, whether it came to motifs or settings or structure or the way they move the plot along. I try to use a lot of those things just so we're kind of in similar territory, so I'm not just going far afield and then coming back in. This is a continuation of the Episode VII Redux, so it's going to be dependent on that. So I'll leave a link in the description or whatever, so you can watch that if you haven't seen it. But this is Star Wars Episode VIII Redux. Again, thank you. Let's see how it goes. So we open on smoldering rubble. An arm reaches up. Now, I actually used a random name generator to get this name. It's Siren Kazdor is the person's arm. So Siren's arm reaches up through the rubble. It's smoking. He makes his way out, and it turns out to be one of the Jedi Knights that was fighting with Luke Skywalker at the end before the whole thing collapsed. So he survived. He crawls out now with an open canopy instead of what it was. Remember, it crashed in. His clothing is singed. The ground is smoking underneath him. He's battered and bleeding. He's stranded on this planet alone now, because recall that Luke Skywalker fled when he realized the threat that Darth Maul posed. He fled to try to get some reinforcements. Siren starts making his way out. He doesn't know what to do. He doesn't have any method of communicating with anybody, so he tries to find some kind of civilization somewhere. Remember, this is a planet. Who knows what he could possibly find? But he ends up running into the flora and fauna, which is at times hostile. Occasionally the fauna will attack, but he doesn't have the strength to fight it off, but it just kind of bites at him and then doesn't believe it will acquire much nutrition from devouring his overcooked frame. So he's making his way through. He wanders away. Again, he doesn't know where he's going. We get some more of the setting, and he finally, after an extended period of time, reaches a village where he collapses. There are people just in the periphery, and he collapses. Then we turn to Leia, who's at the helm of her ship. She's thinking deep thoughts about how to secure this victory. Recall in the last one, the First Order under General Hux and Captain Phasma had attacked the hub of the Republic after having lured away Leia and the main part of the forces away from the hub. So now Leia's trying to figure out what to do. Luke comes in to meet her on the bridge. He says he's ready to leave. Leia tries to convince him. They have this conversation about how one Jedi or Sith doesn't matter. He doesn't need to be leaving. This is about winning fighting this macro monstrous war against the First Order and the remnants of the Empire. It's not about one Jedi or Sith anywhere in the galaxy. And recall, this is echoing the conversation that Phasma had with Hux that she tried to use against him. Luke says that he senses something more sinister at work in the background here, and that there's some kind of a growing storm and a lurking power. He talks about how he just started to rebuild the Jedi Council so they could get, like the police force, Team America police force, back in order to be able to really rebuild the Republic and have a stable set of star systems working together instead of what had happened with the Empire. After some back and forth, Leia calls him a stubborn idiot. Kisses him on the head, or he kisses her on the head, whichever. As he's walking out, she says that there was a Sith that attacked Poe when he was doing his fight. Recall that Poe was the one who confronted Snoke, and it didn't go well. She says that she's chasing down the First Order, and it's likely to have Snoke with them. They don't know where he went, but he's likely to be with them. And so after that little bit of cajoling, then Luke agrees that he'll stick around and assist with this attack. We switch to Poe on another one of the big ships, or on this ship, who is scrambling pilots. He's trying to get pilots together so that he can, and get the planes ready and all that stuff so they can be ready to fight when they need to fight. Finn finds him with Rey. Finn hugs him because, they have a great relationship there. And Poe asks Rey whether she's a pilot. Remember, in my Redux version, it was Finn who was doing most of the flying initially. He's a trained pilot as part of the First Order. And Rey just had a burgeoning interest in it, so she has very little experience actually piloting. So she expresses this to him. She's mostly honest about it. It says, I don't have much experience, but I'm really hungry and I want to do this. And she really wants to join and help when it comes to the battle against the First Order when they catch up to them. Poe scoffs. He's kind of a dick about it. And so Rey storms off and BB-8 follows after making a little beep sound at him. And Poe shrugs it off, explains to Finn that they have to catch the First Order fleet. And of course, this is an inversion of the structure of the actual Episode VIII, wherein they have the First Order chasing. Oh, that was so stupid. The slowest chase in history, the most boring chase imaginable. So it's an inversion of that, but just because I'm trying to work it in, but it's not going to, structurally, that's such a terrible center of your movie. So mostly taking that out, but here it is. So you've got a little bit of that. So they have to chase him. Poe's saying, we have to go after them. We've got to stop them. This is a responsibility of all of us. Finn says he's just going to find a planet outside of the conflict, and he's going to go, get a job, just take it easy, and not have to worry about any of this stuff anymore, because of his entire life, he was dragged into this kind of a thing. He thought he was one thing, he's not. And now he just wants to get out of it and go live a regular life. So Poe is reproachful. He says, this is my fight. This is your fight. The only thing that you're saving by running is you. And he says, I don't want to die out there. I don't think you want me to die out there. And we need everybody that we can get. And Finn, so he gets a little huffy and is just like, I can't. I'm sorry, I can't. And as he's walking out, Poe's like, you know what? Keep BB-8. Just take care of yourself. I wish you the best. So he walks out, storms out, and there you go. Now it cuts back to Leia, who's walking the Millennium Falcon that's docked on her ship. She's kind of touching the accoutrement of the ship. She's touching the seats and thinking about things. I don't want flashbacks. The flashbacks are annoying, but you know what she's thinking about. She's thinking about Han. She's thinking about what she lost, and she's just taking a quiet moment to herself while she's trying to figure out what to do here. Because the bridge was noisy. There were a lot of people around, all that kind of a thing. She's just trying to take a moment. She hears a crash behind her, turns around and sees Rey there, who freezes, who just dropped a whole bunch of stuff after she was climbing around in the vents or something, and there's a big crash. So then they get into a conversation. Leia explains that this is my husband's ship. It's a piece of junk, but it's fast. It can get you home if that's where you want to go. Rey struggles, feels conflicted. She's frustrated. Remember, this is a person who was abandoned and had to struggle for herself and be alone for most of her life. So she's not emotionally stable. She's the moment she's going to get a chance to actually be open and honest about things, it's going to be rough. So she's conflicted. She's frustrated. She just wasn't accepted to help, but she knows she's not ready for it. She tells Leia a little bit about her backstory, how she was abandoned on her planet and her parents left. She doesn't know where they are. They left when she was a child. She struggled to survive as a child. She felt alone. She had to learn to scavenge. Leia gets irked a little bit and she says, I'm sure your parents had their reasons. You can't just hate your parents for this. You don't know what happened. And this is something that a lot of people have to deal with. Recall, obviously, Leia was abandoned as well, to an extent, at least her father. But, I mean, kind of wasn't his fault, but she doesn't necessarily know that. So Leia was kind of abandoned too, and she didn't get a real resolution to her whole parent issue. Her mother died in childbirth, although isn't there some conflict about that, whether her mother died in childbirth? Didn't she say in A New Hope, she said something about remembering her mother or something like that? But whatever the case, we're taking that as canon. So her mother died in childbirth, so Leia feels she feels some sympathy and empathy toward Rey, but she also is kind of frustrated in her own past. She's been defending that to herself, that her parents had their reasons, you know? It's like her mother couldn't help dying in childbirth, but she was abandoned too. She was alone too, despite having whatever extra family that she had. So she defends them, says, I'm sure they had their reasons. They get into a bit of a snippy match, and Rey throws things around a little bit and says, what reason could there be ever to abandon your child? And there's a bit of a forced push that comes out during this emotional upheaval. Leia, of course, being generally force sensitive, she recognizes this, and they have a discussion. She's like, you're force sensitive? Because remember, Leia wasn't there when Rey did that thing to push Kylo Ren off the cliff back in the first one. So she's like, you're force sensitive, and Rey doesn't really understand what that means. You know, she's heard stories, but she doesn't really understand. And then Leia suggests that Rey train with Luke. Of course, she's pretty old when it comes to training. What is it in Knights of the Old Republic, where you start off at like 7 or something like that is when you're supposed to start your Jedi training? But anyway, so Luke started late too. So we cut to Phasma and Hux, who are conquering star systems. They're running roughshod. They're having discussions. Phasma's the brilliant tactician. Hux is really bringing the thing together, but they have a bit of tension between them. Hux is big picture. Phasma's thinking more about, okay, what do we do when it comes to this battle, and what are our tactics and that kind of thing. So they end up at one planet that they've actually sieged because they're not getting through this planet as easily as all the rest of them. It's like, I don't know, Vichy France, you know, I mean, that's kind of that's a bad example because the French kind of rolled over and then fought back. But so it's kind of like that. So they've got ground troops there, and they're mostly taking it over, but they're not able to really conquer the planet. So they're stuck here, and they've got it sieged, but they're stuck here. Obviously, this is slowing them down for purposes of the pursuit. There's and we could say a Chinese girl, just to placate the Chinese, because apparently they have some kind of tentacles in everything that we watch. They just rejected Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because of the portrayal. Well, they didn't say explicitly, but somebody complained about the portrayal of Bruce Lee, and so it's just ridiculous. Anyway, so we've got the girl there. It's like Vichy France. There's a major battle, and you could see this battle and this girl who's not overly competent, but she's fighting for her homeland along with a whole bunch of other people. A bunch of people die. Big battle, cool, awesome war type implements, which I haven't thought of, but I'm sure somebody could. So this is a bigger, meatier scene that there's this conflict between these two characters, and we realize that it's slowing them down as part of the pursuit. Okay, so we switch back to Siren, who wakes up now, and he wakes up in these ruins. It's not like dilapidated ruins, but they're pretty weathered and broken down. He doesn't know where he is. He's very injured still. He's limping. One of his arms doesn't work properly. His face is all battered, and so he struggles to get himself up to try to figure out where he is and what's going on. He starts wandering the ruins and seeing these sculptures that he doesn't know, he hasn't seen before, but they're elaborate and dramatic. He's seeing these shrines around and a little more kind of lived in stuff in some places with candles and that kind of a thing. But it's very old, very ancient, and it's got a lot of history and growth. And as he's walking around trying to decipher like language and pictures that are all over the walls and the structure of the place, he runs into Kylo Ren, who's also severely injured. So they try to have an ineffectual fight where they're attempting to fight each other, but it's not going especially well for either of them. They start using force powers, very ineffectual force powers, but it knocks some stuff over and causes some damage. And they're interrupted by a priest who runs in and says, this is the Darth Revan shrine. This is a holy place, hallowed ground. You can't do this here. So they stop, and out of some respect to something they don't really understand, but they both stop, and then we get them separated. Some other priests and attendants take Kylo Ren somewhere else, and then the priest who initially came in, he takes Siren. And one of the things, and it's difficult to get this across because without giving things away, but so one of the things that this particular priest does is that he will change his size based on what emotion he's trying to elicit from the listener. So he'll be smaller when he's trying to be meek, and get somebody to empathize or something like that. And he'll grow larger. And this is something that'll be imperceptible mostly to people who will be watching it, but he'll grow larger when he's trying to be authoritative or give a sermon or something like that. He starts talking about how this is sanctified land. He walks Siren out into the village where there are a bunch of people around. They can be the fish women or whatever that's in episode 8. But there are a bunch of people walking around. It's a functional village. It's small. It's tiny, but it's a functional village that's designed around these ruins, and like I said, dedicated to Darth Revan. And you could tell, like, this priest is a religious zealot, is very into the religion, knows so much about it. He has these holy books. He has great knowledge of all these esoteric practices and history. And of course, one of the structures here, anybody who knows, obviously, Darth Revan is from the Knights of the Old Republic. And one of the things about the Knights of the Old Republic, I know for like the second game, it became canon that Revan went one way or the other, but you get to choose, as the player, you get to choose whether Revan ends up good or evil. Spoilers for for that game if you haven't played it. But so you get to choose whether this happens one way or the other. So as part of integrating this into this canon, it leaves it open that you're not sure which way this goes. You don't know what this shrine is to. Is it to the good, great Jedi Revan or the evil Sith Revan? So the priest shows the Siren his collection of lightsabers, and he takes him around the town, and so that's fine. Bunch of fish women. Okay. So Leia with her ship finally arrives at Vichy France planet, where there's a major battle that ensues between Leia and their group and Hux and Phasma. So this battle is starting up, a real battle now, and they're trying to protect this planet and take out the First Order. First Order is very strong now, so it's difficult. Luke, Finn, Rey, and Chewie all go down to the planet on the Millennium Falcon, while Poe takes his own cohort down there to try to, help with the siege. And then a few of them get saved by, like Finn, all of them. So all of them get saved by the Vichy France girl who was already there, the Chinese girl. So they get to know her. Obviously they've been under siege situation for a little while, so they've had to learn to deal with this. But she helps them, and they survive because of it. Then they get to talk about what's going on the planet and what other civilizations are there on the planet who could help. And so in a tragic callback, I don't really mean to call back to episode 1, even though I love the storytelling of the first 3 Star Wars movies so much more than the sequels. Prequels have better storytelling than the sequels. They just have, really bad dialogue and all that sort of stuff. But so Finn and all of them talk about how they need to incorporate some of the other civilizations on the planet. They have to go recruit them to try to get back into this defense, because right now the First Order is just attacking the most prominent civilization on this planet. So Finn says he'll go with Vichy France girl so they can rally locals to fight this fight with them. And then along the way, they get into the first ones. The first civilization they have a difficult time there, and it doesn't go well. And there could be a little action beat, but they have to flee that and go to another one. Okay. So then here you go back to Siren, who's talking to the priest about history, the Darth Revan era, talking about Darth Vader. At this point, obviously, Siren has no way of leaving the planet. He's becoming less and less interested in actually leaving the planet at this point, because he's trying to figure out what's going on here. His injuries are mending, though, and he's certainly feeling better. He's sequestered from Kylo Ren because they had issues earlier, and you don't know really what's going on with Kylo Ren at this point. The priest brings him books. He talks about the balance of the Force and how the balance works, but saying that there are certain scriptures and esoteric scribblings on the walls that talk about how if one side, the light or the dark side, can gain enough power, then they can win the conflict permanently, forever, and then balance won't be necessary anymore. It can just be one side. You won't have these recurring issues of conflict to try to balance it out. Then we go back to Finn and Vichy France girl, who are with the second people, and the second people agree after some cajoling, and okay, great, wonderful. So they have a supporting force that they get to bring back. Leia, in the midst of her battles and dealing with her generals and all that stuff, finds out that Snoke's ship is amidst the landing craft on the planet. He's not up there with, Hux in the main ship or somewhere else. He's actually has landed on the planet to oversee the siege, because this is this important planet. It's like a fulcrum amidst the rest of the planets in the area. So we'd have to obviously establish that earlier. But so she tells Luke, and Luke decides to sneak onto Snoke's ship to try to at least take out one of the heads of the Hydra and see what comes out the other end. Plus, Luke still thinks that the Force aspects of it, all those things are the big deal. Those are the things that really need to be undermined to be able to stop what's going on here. here. So he sneaks on the Snoke ship after separating from Rey and Chewie and BB-8, and Finn already left, but so he separates from them and sneaks onto the ship. Okay, so then we cut back intermittently. We have Siren and Kylo attending religious ceremonies, but they both respect the sanctity of religious buildings, so they won't get into conflicts anymore when they're in those kinds of buildings. Because they're both, it's implied, they're both learning a whole bunch about the history of the Force, of different planets, of worlds, of the Jedi, of the Sith. They're learning about all this stuff, and they're actually easing into it and being more interested in that than they are in their immediate needs. Like Siren's need to get back to Luke so they can get back to fighting this stuff, or his need to kill Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren's need to kill Siren, and his need to kill Maul so that he can become the apprentice to Maul's master. So they're setting those things aside and kept in check by all of the attendants and the priests around the other religious personnel. And they go to these religious ceremonies where they learn more and see more of this cultural thing that they had never been privy to before. So the battle continues. Rey, Chewie, and BB-8. Rey is finally learning how to pilot. She's doing much better now, but she's still flying by the seat of her pants. She didn't have any extra training or anything in between when Poe scoffed at her and today, but she's learning on the fly and trying to get better. She's not doing a whole bunch of good, but she's learning her stuff, and Chewie's teaching her, and she's starting to understand Chewie, and BB-8's helping, and it's just going fine. But what they're trying to do is circle around so they can be there for Luke after Luke finishes up in Snoke's ship. But she's doing what she can. But then Captain Phasma shows up, because she realizes they needed another push to win this planet, which is a very important planet. It's Vichy France, it's D-Day, it's the Normandy invasion. So Captain Phasma is coming in, she's dogfighting, she overwhelms Rey and damages the Millennium Falcon severely, but Rey does demonstrate some extra ability and extra knowledge and eventually gets away, though damaged. So we have swooping in Finn and Vichy France girl, who get to come in with the forces that they recruited, and now it's looking more even when it comes to the fight. Poe's still doing his fighting thing. Sorry, I don't have better for Poe to do. Just he can do some heroic stuff, whatever. Have some important mission tasks that he needs to do to help the fight. Fine, sure. But Finn and Vichy girl return with the stuff, and they get back into the fight, and so it's going a little better. Now we get back to the village, and they're just amidst the village. Siren he's walking around. It's relatively empty. He's not seeing a lot of people around, and he wasn't actually told, because what they've been doing is just going to religious ceremonies as they arise. So he sees that some people are going in, and a couple of people are beckoning him over to enter this particular religious ceremony. And so he goes in, and there are priests and villagers attending, on all sides. They're just around. They close off the back. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it, so it looks neat. Whoever the production designer would put a bunch of cool stuff around. So he walks in, and he finds Kylo Ren. Both of them are feeling a lot better at this point, and he sees the priest, the one priest that he's been working with throughout this entire process, and he has the other priests and the attendants. They're not like raucous or anything like that, but there's some kind of excitement in the air. They're excited about this particular ceremony that they were looking forward to. Now, the particular priest, he is larger than we've seen him yet, and imposing, and he hands a lightsaber to Kylo Ren, who ignites it immediately, and then he walks over and hands it to Siren, who just holds it for a second. And then, there's some kind of priest speech who talks about an unfathomable power most can only dream of within these walls, and to demonstrate this power, we need a sacrifice. Now, I know, it sounds a little staid to use the word sacrifice there. I'm not sure what other word to use in this particular, because it shouldn't go too cultish, but that's what he needs. That's what he wants. He needs a sacrifice. So Siren, he looks at Kylo Ren. He's thinking about, kind of the history and the power that's within these walls and what he needs to do, and wondering what's going on. He ignites his lightsaber, and then Darth Maul comes out. And so Kylo Ren and Siren, they look at Darth Maul, and they're not sure what to do here. The priest says, "This is my apprentice, Darth Maul. Whichever of you can kill him will become my apprentice." Now, Siren is just like, what is this about? I don't want to be your apprentice. I mean, I want the power because then I can overcome what's going on here. Kylo Ren, obviously, he's on board. He's like, yes, this is what I've been trying to do. He's shocked that Darth Maul is this guy's apprentice. He doesn't know who this guy is, but if Darth Maul likes him, him, then okay, it's going to work out for him. But Siren is struggling, and he knows at the very least that Darth Maul needs to die. He saw what he was able to do when he fought Luke and all the rest of the Jedi Knights. So he needs to kill him. He needs to kill Kylo Ren. He likes this priest guy. He didn't know that this is the way it was going to go because they had a good relationship. It seemed like a quality place. He was learning a whole bunch. He likes the guy, but he'll figure that out after this whole thing ends. So they start fighting Darth Maul. And this, I think I would prefer Darth Maul with 2 instead of the staff one. We saw Darth Maul fighting 2 people, the staff one, which is amazing, by the way. But I think he'd just have 2 and fight these 2 people. Okay, so it goes around. It's destructive. But only destructive of like people, not the building itself. So they'll be like flailing around and throwing lightsabers, and it'll hit bystanders and all that stuff. And so they're fighting, but Maul is just next level. Okay, so we cut to Luke finding Snoke. They have a standoff. They talk a little bit about it. They have a fight. There's, the electricity. There's Luke's force powers. There's his lightsaber stuff, and he eventually bests Snoke and kills him. And remember, this is part of a larger arc, because when Luke was able to survive his encounter with the Emperor in Return of the Jedi, his daddy helped. So in this, Luke is able to destroy an Emperor-like figure on his own without that kind of a help or that kind of a turn. And there's still, it's difficult again to, I have to point these things out instead of let it happen organically. But so there's a question of who Snoke was and what Snoke was doing. Obviously, he dies in the real Episode VIII, so I'm trying to get as many connections as I can. Battle continues, and Finn and Vichy Girl are battling through the ground forces. Hux, he's observing this battle and sees that it's lost, so he's going to move on to the next planet and try to do that and abandon, Phasma and the rest of the ground forces and just go on and fight another battle. So he takes the big ships and he flees. Phasma shoots down Poe. Rey is still severely damaged, trying to communicate with who's out there and make repairs on the ship with Chewie and BB-8 as frantically as possible, because they need to be ready to pick up Luke when he's ready to go. So then we switch back to Darth Maul, who handily defeats the both of them. And while you may have Kylo and Siren, they'll throw jabs at each other occasionally, but they're mostly just trying to kill Maul because they sense the fact that he's much better than both of them. So they're trying, but they can't get through. And like I said, bystanders are dying. There's force effort that Kylo uses that's killing people on the side, and Siren's trying to maintain it, but he's getting a little looser when he's trying to use these force moves, and he's hurting people, and he's trying to kill Maul, but Maul gets the better of them and disarms them. Then the priest, larger than we've seen so far, he steps forward and he says that the dark side is the only side powerful enough to end this conflict. I've proven that to you here. There is more power than you can possibly imagine, and we need to work together to end this entire conflict for good and save this galaxy before it tears itself apart. Now, Siren obviously is very skeptical. He's very concerned about who this person is now. He doesn't have a weapon. He looks at Maul, and the priest says, "Lay down your lightsaber," to Maul. So Maul does without question. He lays it down. He stands there upright, having won, without an expression on his face. The priest, using the force, flings another lightsaber into Siren's hands and tells him to kill Maul. Now, Siren knows he was already bested in a couple of fights against him. He doesn't have the power, the strength, or the ability, the agility, the intelligence. He doesn't have those things to be able to kill Maul. But he looks at him and he says, I want this guy dead. I don't have much of a choice, so let's go for this. He ignites the lightsaber. It's red. He charges at Maul, stabs him in the heart, and Maul just falls backwards off of the lightsaber, and Siren is blown away. He doesn't know what's going on. Kylo is blown away. He doesn't know what's going on. So they both look around. They look at the priest. They look at the people standing around them. Siren stumbles backwards. He doesn't know what to do. And then the priest says, "Let me show you power." And the place starts shaking. He feels the world rumbling underneath him. He's looking around at the people who are not reacting at all, but they start disappearing. And he doesn't know what the hell's going on. So he's looking around. He's looking at the priest. Kylo's looking at him, and they're trying to figure it out. The people start disappearing left and right. The priests, the attendants, the slain bodies on the ground, they start disappearing. Then Darth Maul stands up, resurrected, his wounds healed. He looks with a blank impression and the shaking stops. The priest walks up slowly to Siren, who still has his lightsaber ignited, and he says, "My name is Darth Plagueis. If you will not join me as my apprentice, then strike me down." Plagueis turns his back to Siren. Siren grips his lightsaber, and then we cut to Rey, who's picking up Luke. And so Luke gets on the ship. He explains what happens. He says, I know Leia is pursuing Hux. She's pursuing Hux with the rest of the fleet. We're still fighting a battle here, but we have to go and help Leia. We can't leave her to that by herself. She doesn't necessarily know what she's in for here. So Rey seconds that. She's like, yes, absolutely. We have to go make sure Leia's all right. Let's get back up there. We can reconvene. We don't know where Poe is. We don't know where Finn is, but they're fighting on the ground here, but we need to get back. So they try, but the ship is severely damaged. Rey tries to hit the light speed and it malfunctions and they go crashing into an unknown planet in an unknown place. I know, it's Star Trek-y. Gotcha. And that's where we end. That's Star Wars Episode VIII Redux. I hope people enjoyed it. I think there were a lot of structurally interesting things that were going on. And like I said, this was just, this one, I took a day for the first one. I took 2 days for this one. And I just think there are so many more interesting things and character development structures that are going on in this version than the version that actually made it with $250 million budget. I just wish there were better storytellers and better writers. So anyway, I thank you guys so much for watching the first one, for watching this one. If you made it to the end, I much appreciate it. And I hope all is well. I know the next Star Wars is coming out soon. I don't know if I'm going to see it. I'm so soured on the whole prospect anymore. But whatever the case, it was fun doing this. It was fun getting it down. I hope somebody likes it. I hope all the best. Okay, bye.